feel like the reason I want to have this conversation because I feel like philosophy sometimes doesn't get embodied enough. It doesn't get, it's too abstract, you know, these ideas by these people that we read, but we need to bring it to like, we just try like, you know, understand these ideas so we can bring it into our lives and see how they're applying to our lives. Yeah. So yeah, one of the philosophers that I love, and I know we both love, is Carl Jung. So let's start with the big man himself, Carl Jung himself. When did you get introduced to Carl Jung? What are some of Carl Jung's ideas that you really resonate with you?
So like most people nowadays, Jordan Peterson is pretty much like the modern day philosopher. He sort of synthesizes past ideas. So I watch him all the time, and he'd talk about integrating your darker side and actually how that brings you energy, and it actually benefits you and the people around you if you can fully integrate, you know. So then obviously Jung is huge on that, the shadow. He really looks into the subconscious, and he sort of goes in deeper detail than Jordan Peterson in that respect. So I find that interesting. So that's, yeah, basically Jordan Peterson is the reason that I know about Carl Jung.
I think like to stick on Jung, I feel like Jung's ideas, right? And I think I'm very, very similar to you. Like Jung's ideas are so abstract that you have to have someone try to like explain them to you, especially if you're new to philosophy. So like, yeah, like watching different people just like go over like so many videos, right? Where it's like, okay, take an idea by Jung, whether that's the collective unconscious, whether that's the shadow self, whether that's the archetypes, right? It's so good to get introduced to these ideas through that, because then once you're like into these ideas, then it's a way you can go and search for yourself, right? Yeah. So like for me, right, I was introduced to Jung by watching loads of videos about him. I think mostly was like kind of looking at the self, kind of looking at the shadow self, and then he has this book. What's the name of the book? I might forget the name of the book. But he has this book about the self. I can't remember the whole title, but he just basically looked at the self from different perspectives, and he has a very interesting way of looking at people. Because he like takes inspirations from like Greek and all these different ways of like, you know, looking at people, and then
symbolism as well, you know, yeah, for sure.
Symbolism and then breaking it down and stuff. So yeah, the question I have for you, let's start like very like simply. What are some of Jung's ideas that you like? You know, do you remember like an idea at the beginning from Jung that, you know, was something that you kind of will gravitate towards? And before you answer that question, I kind of want to start first, right?
Yeah.
Like I was talking about the idea of the self, right? I think Jung's conception of the self is so unique because it goes deeper than the surface. It goes deeper than like this idea of like, oh, you're just a person and you have to just kind of exist in the world. It goes towards like our unconscious and like how deep we think and how we show up in the world, and how the version of us that show up in the world starts internally.
Yeah, that's actually how your personality presents itself. It initially begins under the surface, and then that arises out of that. So yeah, like I remember I watched a lot of videos. One of his biggest quotes is where he describes it as, I think, an island, an ocean, and the ocean is your subconscious, sort of like moving this island around, which is your sort of conscious self, you know. But the subconscious is almost what steers you, and whether you like it or not, it actually controls your behavior, and it presents itself whether you like it or not. But I feel like, yeah, Jung places a lot more emphasis almost on the subconscious in how it relates to the conscious mind rather than the other way around. But where you address your subconscious with your conscious mind, that's how you can start to then integrate and grow as a person, you know. And you know,
and I think that process of like addressing your subconscious through your conscious mind is such a like integrated way of being, because in order to do that, you have to really understand the things that you do just by like, you know, habit. You know, you have to understand, why do I do this? You know, whether it's like, okay, the way I show up in the world, the relationship between you and your parents, like, why is it like this? Is it something that, you know, in their subconscious that they haven't been able to kind of look at, or in my subconscious I haven't been able to look at?
Even more tellingly is people or traits that you don't like. Often, if you think about why you don't like them, it's normally because you can see yourself and you hate that. So it's your darkest parts of you that you don't even want to look at because you're disgusted by it. So you're like, oh, disgusting behavior. It's like, why do you think that? You know, like, I don't know, he's selfish or he's rude or he's sort of too proud or he's too humble.
Mm.
All of these are different parts of you that you're battling with. You know, otherwise, why would you be bothered by it?
Absolutely.
You wouldn't be bothered by it if it wasn't some way talking to your subconscious.
Absolutely. Okay, that idea of like what you see in others that angers you, something that you don't like about yourself, is so important. That was like one of the biggest turning points. Made me reflect on like, okay, what other people do, it's got nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
But if I'm like affected by it, that means I have not done the internal work. I've not done the internal work to understand why that affects me, you know, why I feel these emotions. So it's like Supreme's like, you know, responsibility. It's like, how do I take the responsibility onto me to do the inner work, you know? And I think, okay, let's try bring it from this abstract to like the kind of like a way we can embody it. How difficult was it to do the inner work? Once you started understanding about Jung and started taking some of his ideas, how difficult is it to kind of like, okay, cool, like he told me about looking at the self. How am I going to go about doing that?
It's a work in progress. I feel like it relates as well to discovering self, right? Like individuation, I think it is. So basically, no one actually achieves individuation, but you can become a lot more synchronized, a lot more sort of, what's the word, integrated if you begin this. So I'm at the point now where I see fragmented parts of myself, but I'm acknowledging them. It's just a good psychological exercise to do and actually understand that all of these different archetypes that make up your personhood, all of them are you in some way, and how can I sort of start to address them? It's very hard to do, and it's a lot easier in theory, you know. A lot of these philosophers, they have great theory, but a lot of them, they had, you know, a lot of trouble. So, you know, it's not easy. So, but that's sort of the start point, is addressing it. You can't achieve sort of individuality if you don't first address that you're fragmented. If you want to deny that, you won't even begin to integrate, you know. It's impossible. So you have to at least acknowledge it. You know?
I'd completely agree. And I feel like it's a split test too, between people who can just take on these ideas, people who reject it, like right out.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like I always try to do this, but I speak to my friends about like, yo, like Jung, you know, like I'd be trying to like get them to think about these ideas that he's holding their head on a deeper level. But he is very, very telling. Some people will just like immediately be like, I have no idea what you're talking about, and reject it. While others will understand that it's more about the play on ideas and more about how do we balance it rather than just like, you know?
It's so I heard about this, how the brain works. So you have two sides to the brain.
Absolutely.
It's very similar in that respect. So the right brain wants to question everything, I believe, and treat life with more wonder. It's sort of that kid side where you're open to new things. But the left brain wants pure certainty because it makes life predictable. Even like evolutionarily, like it's a lot easier to just predict things with a clear frame. So basically, you can get to the point of delusion if you only think with your left brain. That's where you become deluded about self. You have all these suppressed sort of darker emotions that you don't understand, so you just ignore them, you suppress them. But if you start to open up a bit and really think, and it's always this dance between the left and the right side, because you need some certainty, but you can't not question things. And I think question everything. You know?
No, 100%. I think like, yeah, balancing both worlds, understanding there is two, and then finding a way to integrate, like you've been talking about. It's like the first stage to it. A question I had actually when you were speaking is that we see, especially nowadays, there's a fragmented kind of society. You know, our culture is kind of fragmented, and you know, Jung has this idea that, you know, like we were just talking about, what you see in the world, what you reject in the world is something you reject in yourself.
Yeah.
Do you think the culture war that we're currently having, or what's going on in this kind of society, is more of a philosophical problem? You know, it's more like linked to our inability to integrate our two sides of ourselves. You know, like maybe it's even the past and the future. Like we're kind of stuck in this in-between phase, and that's why there's a gap. That's why there's a kind of like a tension, you know. How, looking at it from a philosophical point of view, how would you describe like what's currently going on in our society?